Bitcoin's dominance has been one of the biggest questions and debates in crypto lately. But the thing is, if you can actually master what happens on this chart, you stand to make profit from the same singular idea multiple times. Okay, if you make a 2x on Bitcoin, you can make a 3x on another coin and a 5x on another coin, and you can do them consecutively without taking on much additional risk. It's a strategy that I've personally been using for about 8 years now since I've joined the crypto space, and it works very, very well. We're pretty good at analyzing Bitcoin dominance on this YouTube channel, and if you've been watching this channel for the last couple of years, you're going to know that we're pretty much always right when we're talking about it. But it's not just because I'm fantastic, it's actually primarily because it's really easy, and it gets a lot easier when you take your emotions out of it. So I want to dive pretty deep into this with you today and really discuss how these kind of profit opportunities can happen with quite low risk, and also just what we're seeing right now. I mean, altcoins are getting decimated, and I really want to break down kind of why I think we're seeing a lot of this and where I think we could be going. But before we get any further, there are some phenomenal links to phenomenal exchanges linked in the description down below. Definitely check them out if you're interested in trading in these markets, because they're safe, reliable places to be, at least in my experience. And always make sure you're not from a restricted region. But bringing it back to the YouTube video, the very first thing that we need to discuss here, before we get into the really fun profit, and by the way, like, we're talking, you know, opportunities that can literally turn like $1,000 into even, you know, 100K reasonably. You'll understand why by the end of this video. It sounds kind of crazy, but it's really just very much rooted in logic and fact, and yeah, just super straightforward when you kind of digest it. But before we get there, let's look at what's actually happened, okay? Bitcoin's dominance has a history of ranging between big price levels, but it's not super well established. We're kind of really confirming it on this rally right here. Now, Bitcoin's dominance back here bottomed out at about 36% back in 2018. Then it managed to rise up to 70%, and it came back down to roughly the same level at about 39%, and now we're heading up to roughly the same level as well. The overall trend for Bitcoin's dominance is down because this is just what's been happening throughout much of its history early on. And that also makes sense because as more capital enters crypto, it's probably not going to be looking just to go into Bitcoin because it's a big number and you can't buy whole Bitcoin and whatnot. Now, it's really, really important to understand that these cycles are money leaving speculative coins, which are actually just bullshit, and re-entering Bitcoin, which is seen as more of a safe haven inside of crypto. That's important because while you want your coins to go up and you have a good thesis for why your coins might go up, markets don't agree with that right now. And they don't agree with that until we reach kind of maturation phases in these markets. There's a lot of kind of fractal analysis and so on that we're going to be covering today in this YouTube video, and quite frankly, I think it's actually quite exciting. It's a little bit nerdy, but you know, I know that you guys for sure are definitely going to be able to keep up because we're not doing anything particularly complex anyway. But what I do want to do is bring up the BLX chart right here and the dominance chart right here and just start running through some comparisons with you guys here on the weekly time frames. Okay, so we're going to put these both on the weekly time frames, and right now, as you can see, I'm going to hide my camera as well because I want to make sure that you guys can see everything on screen. Right now, as you can see, you know, we've got some pretty interesting setups we can start diving into here. So I'm going to zoom out on this chart, and what I want to do is actually draw your attention over to this point on the chart right here, which if I find where it is, it's right around over here. Put a vertical line down, and this is really interesting because we can start to kind of ask ourselves questions about, well, what makes these markets top or bottom out, right? And I think that's a really, really important question that we need to be able to ask ourselves here. And so we've got two, you know, very distinct kind of phases in the market here. The first one where Bitcoin's dominance comes down happened here. We're back in 2019, 2020. This was a speculative rally in altcoins, right? We can see that, you know, Bitcoin dominance came down, which invariably means that altcoins went up. And I want to demonstrate that for you. So I really want to make sure that we're not actually leaving any kind of pages unturned here. So let's go ahead and bring a third chart on board. And I'm just going to take Ethereum, which is a really nice kind of mascot just for us to kind of digest exactly what's happening here. So if we go ahead and kind of rewind this chart a little bit to the first vertical line that I put down, we can see that this is exactly where one sec. This is exactly where Ethereum Ethereum ended up going down a little bit more, but after this, it went very, very crazy for Ethereum. And at this point, when Bitcoin's dominance came down again right here, this was really quite a crazy time for Ethereum, because it's kind of in the middle of a big move. I mean, if we put this on the logarithmic, we already moved up by a lot up to this point. I want to make this very clear with you. Here, it only lasted a few more weeks, and then we started our uptrend as well. Which is also very, very important. Obviously a lot of these Bitcoin dominance losses, they actually kind of started from here, which is roughly where Ethereum kind of bottomed out, right? Take a look at how these kind of vertical lines are converging here. So, really, really important stuff here. But, this one tells us this story even more clearly. Now, it's still a little bit unclear, so bear with me. I'm going to kind of demystify this completely throughout this video. But the reason that I'm pointing this out as critically important in this market here, ladies and gents, especially this one here, is we tend to see in both cases that Bitcoin's dominance will start coming down after Bitcoin has already been inside of an uptrend, okay? So this one's really interesting. Let's go ahead and rewind the chart and take a look at what happened here. Because what we saw at this point in the market, in fact, we'll go even further back. We'll go back to basically where the dominance kind of topped out. What we're seeing here is a bear market that takes Bitcoin from 20K down to 3.1. We were doing, if you guys were subscribed back here, it was just kind of crazy. So that was really, really cool. And then Bitcoin managed to rally incredibly well. I mean, from this low, it managed to get up to $14,000, and it only took about 200 days. But, in terms of kind of active price trends, only 84 days of that was actually trending up. The first kind of 100 days here, more like 130 days, this was just consolidation. It was just consolidation, right? So this is important because it shows us that we get a really big rally here. It's an 84-day rally. The price goes up by 237%, which is a 3.3 times gain. You put $1,000 in, you get 3,300 out, which is absolutely crazy in and of itself. But obviously the entire bull market, the entire market in terms of participants definitely strongly expected that this was just kind of a bull flag and it was going to continue going higher, right? Myself included. I actually got this one wrong as well. So, that's important because that starts to tell us a little bit about why Bitcoin's dominance started to come down at this point, okay? It didn't come down at earlier points. Let's be very, very clear. Bitcoin's dominance didn't come down here when things started to really take off. In fact, when Bitcoin started to really take off, what actually happened was that Bitcoin's dominance went up. And this is a really, really big deal. We need to understand the context of where we're coming from, and then we're going to bring this to the present day, and we're going to start talking about those profit-making opportunities. If you're getting impatient and you don't really want to stick around for that, then you may as well just not even be on this YouTube channel. I swear I'm just saying it as it is, ladies and gents. The reason I'm saying this is because if you don't like being thorough about affairs relating to your money, then I cannot relate with you. I cannot relate with you, and I don't want to have this conversation with you, quite frankly. I'm talking to, educated, intelligent people that have got money that they respect in these markets, and you're going to need to go deep into these things if you want to make life-changing sums of money. I'm sorry, if you don't like it, get the fuck out. Okay, back to the video. What we've got here is this really, really nice kind of low bear market phase here where, obviously everybody was super scared and super unhappy, and, it was just not a nice time to be in crypto, but it was nice as far as kind of chart patterns go. And as we come out of that, what's actually happening, on the contrary to what most people would probably think in terms of altcoins, is people don't want to take on risk, okay? This is a very clear example of Bitcoin's dominance actually going up during this period. And that's because, you've suffered a lot during this time period here, and Bitcoin suddenly started to move out. In this circumstance, you're not going to be looking to take on more risk because you've just gotten beaten and bruised up for quite some time. I mean, we're looking at this on the weekly time frame, so it's really easy to lose touch here, but that's 470 days, which is well over a year. And that's a lot of time to be feeling that pain as far as kind of, bear market vibes go, okay? And so as you're starting to come out of that, what's actually happening is a lot of people were still in their shitcoins. By the way, I sold all of my shitcoins over here and I never ever looked back. I just haven't come back into, kind of altcoins since then in bits, but, we'll get to that later on. It's just not something I like doing, and you'll continue to kind of see why in this video. as we're getting all of these kind of bear market holders with their altcoins, holding all the way down. Bear in mind, Bitcoin's down by 80 something percent here, 84%, but altcoins would have been down by like 99%. And the difference between 99% and 84% is enormous. Okay. It's not a 15% difference. It's more like I don't know, like a 2x different or something, something crazy. I mean, we'll just show you, in fact, just to make sure we've got some basic kind of understandings of how kind of percentages work in math. I can't even go, all the way down. Let's just say that, 96% is kind of what we're looking at here. To go from 96% up to where Bitcoin actually bottomed out, Bitcoin had to pull off a 4 times gain. That's a plus 300% move, which is a 4 times gain. Okay, so the difference between minus 84 and minus 96 is a 4 times gain. Okay, it's really not easy to pull something like that off. You'd have to go from 760 up to 3.1, which is just quite an ask. It's a big ask to make in these markets. And I think that's really important because these altcoin holders will have been feeling that and knowing that and been very consciously aware of it. Yet what's actually happening here in this market is, Bitcoin starts moving up, altcoins are still not moving. Why are they not moving? Because they did so shit in the beginning. Bitcoin's stolen the show. Bitcoin's worth taking risk when you've been beaten and bruised for so long. And then these altcoins that are performing badly in the face of Bitcoin performing well end up getting dropped. And that's how we see this dominance going up, okay? This dominance going up is nothing but a representation of people selling their altcoins, their Ethereum, their Solana, their Cardano, whatever you want, into Bitcoin. That's what we're seeing on these occasions here. That's how Bitcoin dominance goes up, right? It means that Bitcoin accounts for more of the market cap in crypto than altcoins, okay? So that means altcoins sold off into Bitcoin. And that's going to happen because we now have something that's kind of moving in this chart, which means that we don't really have a reason to be so scared anymore. Yet altcoins are not doing well, so they get dropped. Okay, so that's really important. But when does it change? It changes when sentiment turns positive. Okay, look, this is the first time that Bitcoin pulled off any sort of significant consolidation pattern after the uptrend started here. Okay, we had a little kind of consolidation right here below 6K. It lasted about 3-4 weeks, but this one kind of from this candle right up to here lasted more like 12-13 weeks, which is much longer. That's obviously about 3 months at this stage now. And that's important because not only have we now seen the price go up by a lot, it's now consolidating in what looks like a really nice bullish pattern. So now, where we had a lot of kind of trauma and, we were just a little bit like, it was a disbelief rally, right? You've seen the Wall Street cheat sheet. Let's just pull it up real quick. The Wall Street cheat sheet, you've seen it a million times. The disbelief rally is the final rally that happens, right? Let's just zoom into this, make sure you guys can see this nice and clearly. And there we go. So disbelief rally right here, that's going to be the final rally, which actually, does take off for the market. But obviously everybody's too pessimistic and, depressed to accept it, right? And that's what happens here. But later on, we end up in, hope. We end up in optimism. We end up in euphoria, thrill, somewhere here. You decide. It doesn't matter. We're not really too concerned about which one exactly it is, but the point is we enter different stages of the market, and so we're actually willing to take on a little bit more risk. Now we need to understand the kind of market dynamics that lead to this, because as far as kind of humans go and kind of human psychology, this is really straightforward. All that's happening here is we're going from a place of intense trauma, intense sadness, intense fear, and we're then transitioning to a place of excitement and greed and honestly just confidence and arrogance, because you've now seen Bitcoin pull off, over a 3 times gain, and it's done most of that within 3 months. That's going to make you feel really positive and very smart. And, it's also erased most of what happened in the bear market, right? Most of the bear market happened in these kind of price ranges. We were above all of that shit at this point, right? I mean, the only time that Bitcoin had ever traded above this price level before, it was here and very, very, very briefly, but it doesn't even count really. What have I done? It was, and just here, right? So that's important because it just feels euphoric. It just feels like it's a big deal. It feels like, we're in a good place and we're now making money. We're going to get our ex-girlfriend back. Everything's good, right? That's kind of how we feel about the markets when they move up by a lot, especially as you come out of a bear market, and especially as, you've kind of transitioned away from alts and you're just kind of holding Bitcoin. And all of these things, they're going to lead from a psychological perspective. They're going to lead people to start taking a little bit more risk. And that's really important because in crypto, really the only ways you can take more risk are by leveraging up, which you wouldn't reasonably increase at this stage, or trading altcoins. And the thing about altcoins that's really important to understand is they're really easy to manipulate, okay? We're looking at Bitcoin with a market cap of, like, let's say X, and X in this case represents $1 trillion. A comparative altcoin that might start doing well might only be worth $20 million, right? And so in order to move Bitcoin, that's going to take big banks and institutions and whatnot to kind of, you know, get in, Michael Saylors of the world. But in order to move altcoins, I mean, depending on how small it is, you and I can move altcoins. We can move altcoins with $30, depending on how small they are, right? That's what we call the trenches. So, you know, with these smaller coins, let's call it $20 million market cap, you might only need 10K, 100K to move these coins up by a factor of 2 times, okay? And that's really important because this triggers FOMO. At this point in the market right here, you're feeling smart, you're feeling confident, you're feeling arrogant, you're feeling assured of success, ladies and gents. You've just lived through a bear market. You've seen the price analysis of previous bear markets. We've tripled in price in about 3 months. You're consolidating. It's obvious that it's going to keep on going up at this point. So you're feeling confident, and that confidence mixed in with a little bit of FOMO that's going to get triggered from a shitcoin or a meme coin or an altcoin going up, that is going to result in you starting to speculate a little bit more and taking more risk on in these markets. And that is how we end up seeing Bitcoin's dominance coming down here. That's what ended up happening. It was right after this point. Pay attention to where my vertical lines are. I'm just going to move this back to where it originally was. It was right after this point here where Bitcoin's dominance peaked that we ended up seeing lots of speculation coming into the altcoin markets. And that's not an accident, okay? It's happening because the market now has space to be optimistic. You can probably already start drawing parallels with the real world in today's price, and it's absolutely the same case. We have a very pessimistic market right now, and we haven't reached the stage where people are ready to start speculating, but I think we're very close, and that's why we're making this video today on this YouTube channel. Once again, if you haven't already, make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, hitting up those likes, doing all of that good stuff right here. If you are enjoying these videos or finding them useful in any way whatsoever, it does help the channel out a lot. Obviously, tick that bell icon. And those of you that are interested in actually a very, very interesting package, we've got a super exclusive 12-week program which we've had incredible success with. Absolutely everybody that's ever come in has had flying color successes. It's not going to stay that way. Eventually someone's going to fuck this up, but so far it hasn't happened. And it is a very, very powerful package. It's expensive, but it's serious. And if that kind of sounds interesting to you, then definitely reach out on this step, and a member of the team will give you some information about that. So that's super, super cool. But let's bring it back here to the video. We end up seeing that speculation coming back into the market right here, and that's represented by Bitcoin's dominance going down, which means people are selling Bitcoin in order to buy other altcoins, okay? Now, it didn't quite work out because, you know, as we know with Bitcoin's history, Bitcoin took a shit, and actually Bitcoin's dominance still generally kind of came down during this time period, but, you know, it didn't last particularly long because Bitcoin ended up bottoming out around 3K, and that really reversed sentiment. And we can see if we just kind of draw a vertical line right here and then do the same vertical line on Bitcoin here, we're going to see probably a really interesting turning point happening right here. Yeah, this is probably around about where Bitcoin starts to really nosedive. Actually, no, it's not. The drop has already happened. So let's see what happens here to trigger Bitcoin's dominance going up. And it was this brief consolidation right here at 10K, followed by a pullback. And the reason that Bitcoin's dominance actually goes back up here is because Bitcoin steals the limelight again. You can see very clearly between this dotted yellow and this dotted yellow here, the main difference in price is that we enter a very aggressive Bitcoin bull market. So it's the same thing happening here. As Bitcoin enters a very aggressive bull market, people are not so interested in altcoins. Why? Because you only speculate on altcoins when you want to make more money than Bitcoin can make you. But if Bitcoin itself is moving aggressively, and this is very aggressive because on this chart, we're quite literally going from a price level at the low of about 10K to the high at about 30K. That's a 3 times gain, and it happened within about 4 months, 3.5 months, right? 110 days. So that's a big price move to be seeing here. and it's happening very quickly. So this kind of removes our reason to speculate on the altcoin market, because we're only in alts to make more money than we would otherwise make in Bitcoin, right? Otherwise, why would we, you know, take on we don't even care about the altcoins we buy, right? Most of you guys that buy coins do not care. You might lie to yourself and say that it's got good tech because of whatever, but for the most part, if there was no price element attached to it, you wouldn't buy it, right? Like if there was no kind of like speculative reason to make some profit, you wouldn't buy it. So most people don't care about these altcoins, but they care a hell of a lot more about Bitcoin. Maybe not even that much at all, but still much more than they would about an altcoin. And that's really important, because that's going to actually make people feel willing to move from altcoins back into Bitcoin, purely because Bitcoin is going to be seen as that much safer kind of opportunity to make profits in these markets. So that's what we're seeing on occasions here, where things get really, really crazy. But again, there's nuance to this, okay? While things are going up and getting really, really crazy, there are going to be altcoins that start waking up and altcoins that start stealing the show. So if we bring this third page back on right here and take a look at what this means, you know, if we look at Ethereum on this occasion here, let's go ahead and actually, we already have this drawn. This is where Ethereum continues going really crazy. It's already going crazy because it's Ethereum, right? It's a bad example. Other altcoins would have, you know, been a little bit slower to kind of pick up here, but obviously Ethereum kind of used to lead the market, not so much anymore. You know, but from here up to Ethereum's high, that's still a 400% move, or a 5x gain. Okay, Ethereum goes from 960 to nearly 5k. Okay, so that's a 5 times gain for Ethereum here, and that triggers after Bitcoin has already been in a bull market. Now, the reason that we're seeing this is because we've now had a really nice atmosphere. Now we're greedy and we want to take on more risk. So it's that same kind of cyclical pattern that we're seeing repeating itself. But let's continue on. We're not even at the real meat and potatoes of this video yet, and we've already covered some really, really strong bits of value. Now, let's see where Bitcoin's dominance starts to bottom out. You know, what causes Bitcoin's dominance to bottom out? So let's go ahead and draw another vertical line right here on Bitcoin's chart this time, and let's see what happens moving forward for BTC. So I'm just going to remove some of these as we continue playing this chart forward. We have a little bit of consolidation. We keep moving up. Altcoins are still gaining ground against Bitcoin here, doing very, very well, and doing much better actually toward the end of this kind of phase here, which I think is particularly interesting as well. And I cannot pause the chart anymore. Yeah, that's right here. So if I go ahead and rewind to what happened back here, now we can kind of start to digest why Bitcoin's dominance bottoms out. And this is really, really interesting, right? If you already know what the chart does, maybe you've been here since 2021, you're going to know that this was the top for Bitcoin. Bitcoin actually ended up coming back down here and then kind of came back up and then crashed again, right? This is more or less the pattern that Bitcoin ended up producing here on this chart. And the reason that that's important is that kind of marks the end of speculation for altcoins. They're still seeing nice big moves up, but it's not anywhere near the kind of strength and, you know, kind of ferociousness, I guess you could say, that we saw previously. And that's because the market was done. The market had already topped out. And, you know, obviously it continued to set newer highs later on, but they weren't as impressive. And you know, we can continue to kind of replay the chart and get a sense for what that meant. Let's go ahead and drop another vertical line here. This was the final time. What have I done? What have I done? I'm very fat-fingered today, ladies and gents. Bear with me. I'm not pushing the right buttons today, but, you know, right here, Bitcoin, I'm guessing this was Bitcoin's peak. Let's go and see kind of how good my drawing was, how accurate this was right here. But obviously, yeah, we didn't bottom out quite as low as I drew out here. But, you know, we end up seeing Bitcoin's dominance top out here, and we're seeing, you know, the subsequent reaction rally now. This is Bitcoin coming back up. So zooming in here onto the daily time frame, what we're expecting is if Bitcoin moves up, we're going to see Bitcoin's dominance move up as well, right? That's what we're expecting. But it actually doesn't happen on this occasion, okay? What happens on this occasion when Bitcoin bottoms out, and let me just draw this properly because accuracy is important right now, just to avoid confusion, nothing else really. But, you know, this is kind of more or less where Bitcoin bottomed out and started to rally up. And, you know, for a brief time, Bitcoin does gain a little bit of dominance, which is what we're expecting, but it actually changes. It changes quite a lot, roughly around here. And the reason that it changes roughly around here is that now we're kind of out of the woods, right? If you kind of try, you know, I don't know if you've been here back when this was happening, but if you try and kind of draw your mind back here, and if you weren't here, just kind of, you know, really, really be, you know, sensible with me, because I don't want you to kind of act like this was easy and hindsight, nothing is easy in these markets. But, if you try and understand and feel the struggle of traders that were here at this point, then what's happening is, we had a stellar rally. We ended up dropping out at about $64,000. We fell all the way down by more than 50% down to 29K. And now we're rallying back up and it looks like things are fine again. So it's marked roughly over here where Bitcoin's dominance starts coming down. Like I said, when you see a big Bitcoin rally like this, you're probably expecting Bitcoin's dominance to go up. In this case, it only happened at the very beginning and then it stopped going up, okay? And the reason that we're seeing the difference now is because we've reached a more mature stage in the market. This is the big nuance and the big difference that I think people just do not really internalize, or maybe they do, but they're just too emotionally attached to the markets. It could be any number of things, but the point is, you're going to see in the more mature phases of these markets that when Bitcoin goes up, altcoins will start to steal the show. But in earlier phases of bull markets, which is what we've been in so far in 2024 and 2025, Bitcoin leads the way and altcoins are not attractive. It's only when Bitcoin debunks and disproves the bears constantly and sets brand new all-time highs and goes to very, very impressive price levels. It's only when stuff like that happens that we start seeing that speculation environment opening back up for altcoins. Before that, we're still, even though Bitcoin's going up, we're still too traumatized by the previous bear market that we just finished, and we're still enjoying the Bitcoin-specific bull runs here. It's that later on in the market, because we're, pretty much like more than halfway through the bull market at this stage on this chart for Bitcoin. The bull market, you could argue, kind of started back down here. I mean, we've completed most of it by this point. This is where you're seeing speculation for altcoins coming in again, okay? So we see Bitcoin's dominance come back down. What does this mean? If you're holding altcoins, you made a lot of money. Bitcoin was going up, but altcoins went up a hell of a lot more. But again, it stops. Why does it stop? Let's take a look at what happened right here on Bitcoin's chart. And let's continue to play it back. This is just where Bitcoin bottoms out again. Tops out again. It's all just fear, right? I mean, it's this whole idea of we're so back, and then we're just screwed, right? Like it's just that constant kind of whiplash of emotion and so on. And I think that's obviously quite funny and enjoyable to kind of watch in the market. And, you and I, people in these markets that are kind of more like sharks, we're just going to kind of, watch and observe and maybe even laugh at it a little bit. And then as we kind of play this market forward, we see the next high. This is the final one I'm going to do before I get to some really, really interesting stuff, but it's important. This is obviously where Bitcoin kind of tops out and sets its all-time high. It does go a little bit higher from here, but it's pretty much done. So this is kind of Bitcoin's rally, and this is important. This stage in the bull market is important because we didn't know we were in a bear market yet, right? Like things only really started to get bad, I would say probably below 40. Above 40, we were kind of still on. Above 30, we still had a chance. So I think that's why we're continuing to see a lot of kind of altcoin speculation, because if we kind of try and draw what the bottom is on this chart here, it's probably going to be somewhere around here. Actually, I'll just keep that line there and we'll draw a new one right here. And if we draw where that comparative price level is for Bitcoin, we're looking at something around here. And if we kind of try and digest what's happening, you can see how, the market's not so fun anymore. We're having that FTX crash very soon. Obviously SBF, he's coming in roughly, or actually a little bit later on, is when he crashes the market. Somewhere around here is probably where we top. Let's just wait for that to happen. There we go. We get that top in right now. That's obviously after Bitcoin's dominance has bottomed out. And now we're very, very firmly in a bear market. So this is important because we're now kind of switching gears, and we're actually now everything I'm going to say from here onwards is relevant to the present day. So here's what's really interesting. Now, if we continue to kind of keep that line here drawn for this vertical level, and just kind of roughly mark where that is on Bitcoin. It's here for Bitcoin, but I'm just gonna kind of mark the bottom because this was the market bottom for Bitcoin. We start seeing a pretty clear change in trend for Bitcoin's dominance, right? This was just kind of moving left and right and doing its thing, whatever, no big deal. What we see later is the rally that hasn't stopped yet. And it's important because we finished the previous bull market and we finished the previous bear market, so we fully reset. This is a brand new cycle, and it's the same thing that we were discussing from here before, which allowed Bitcoin to really move back up very, very strongly. I just want to very, very quickly draw your mind back to what this looked like. It was right around over here that we saw really big strides in Bitcoin's dominance moving up, okay? Or especially, I should say, big strides, strides that, really kind of were quite significant for these markets. I'm not pushing the right keys again, so bear with me while I get this right. It's roughly around here where my crosshair is, that we're seeing Bitcoin really shoot up, and Bitcoin's dominance shoot up with it. Obviously, just to kind of make sure we're covering everything properly, as we enter a bear market here, this is where people kind of really lost faith in altcoins, and things started to go pretty well for Bitcoin. As far as dominance goes, nothing was going well for Bitcoin overall. This is where we kind of realized we were in a bear market, right? Well, many people did, not everybody. I didn't. I was a little bit late to realize it was a bear market, but I still made a profit on the way down and another profit on the way up, because it's not enough to do it just one of the ways. You already know me, ladies and gents. That's just how it is over here. Obviously, those of you that subscribed back then, you'll know that, we've been around for a long time, kind of, slaying these markets, which is very, very cool. Not always, not always perfect, obviously, but I'm always kind of doing my best. But that's important, because now if we take a look at this new market cycle, this highly, highly relevant event to what we're looking at right now, this is where Bitcoin really kind of gets to, spread its wings open and take flight. And it's a bearish, horrible environment. Many of you watching this video today were probably back here, back when the market kind of, did this whole 370-day downtrend. It was 77% down, which is not as intense as previous bear markets that we saw, but somehow it was the worst Bitcoin bear market ever by many, many people's definitions, including me. Just in terms of how it felt, it was definitely the worst in my opinion. I think many, many people will agree, or definitely one of the worst post kind of 2013, 2014 era for Bitcoin, because before that, the crashes were really quite crazy. And you also didn't have a reason to believe in Bitcoin necessarily, not like today, right? It wasn't really, it didn't stand the test of time. There weren't so many big players. It was just, nerdy internet money back then. But here it was already mainstream, and it still got absolutely fucked. And I think that's important, because that just tells us a little bit about kind of how the market was kind of reeling at this point, and just kind of recoiling from what had happened. And so, because of that kind of recoiling from what had happened, we're seeing Bitcoin's dominance go up as Bitcoin rises up. Because again, same as before, people that were holding altcoins are not really gaining right now, but Bitcoin is moving up. So they're just dropping those coins. And we're seeing just all throughout, just look at both charts right now, all throughout this uptrend, Bitcoin is gaining dominance, okay? Even when it's going sideways, it's gaining dominance. It's still gaining superiority pretty much no matter what happens, which is a very familiar song right now. It's a very familiar tune, for Bitcoin to kind of be playing to, where if Bitcoin goes up, dominance goes up. If Bitcoin goes down, dominance goes down. This is not because of those individual Bitcoin price moves anywhere near as much as this is because Bitcoin is recoiling from its previous bear market. And so we don't feel, an appetite to really speculate in any large, kind of way. We're still going to have kind of significant events, right? I want to make this very, very clear. A percentage drop like this from 61.5 down to 54% for Bitcoin's dominance is huge, okay? This represents life-changing money in and of itself for altcoin. And this is why it's so easy to make so much money in crypto, right? Like, you don't actually need to even catch the real move in order to make a lot of money. This was just an obvious macro resistance level for Bitcoin's dominance, and that's where Bitcoin's dominance kind of started to top out as a result, right? So, that makes a lot of sense. And also the environment that this happened in, I think, is particularly interesting because it again proves exactly what I've been saying all throughout this video. If we take a look at what happened during this price range, this was when Bitcoin started to trade sideways and down for a really long time, and it was a very, very painful price range. So it's happening after Bitcoin finished its bear market and then began its subsequent bull market, and after Bitcoin pulled off another 5 times gain. You're seeing very clear patterns here. It's only after Bitcoin is able to pull off a really expansive move that takes a lot of time. In this case, it was 460 days. And the reason it took so long on this occasion is because the market is maturing, and a maturing market will get slower, okay? So it's just kind of, starting to fall in line a little bit closer with the rest of Wall Street. And the theory on why that's happening, at least for me, is pretty straightforward. If you're interested, It's a long video, so I don't care. I'll talk about it with you. You know, it's because, you know, a lot of the money that now moves these markets is the same money that's already been moving other markets for years and decades prior. And so, you know, just like anything else, it's imagine a company that, you know, starts up, you know, by a guy like me or a guy like you know, just like a little startup, but we become incredibly successful and we end up selling to, you know, a bigger company. You know, we're going to run it one way, but when the bigger guy comes in, he's going to take over and he's going to start systemizing and standardizing things to be in line with what he is used to. You know, and that's what ended up happening with crypto in this market cycle that we're in right now. And we know this. It's a really shit market cycle. It's a really painful market cycle. And it makes complete sense because, you know, these big guys have gotten in now and it's their playground. It's not our playground. We're living in their world now. You know, they stepped in, they conquered, and it's totally understandable how that happened. Number one, people in crypto are fucking retarded. And number two, they have a lot of money. And when you have a lot of money, you can really achieve anything that you want. You can really manipulate and just create anything that you want in these kind of financial, especially in crypto where it's not even regulated particularly well. So, you know, it's no surprise though, again, you know, Bitcoin rallies up really well, it consolidates, and that's where we start seeing this Bitcoin dominance starting to come down just a little bit. And this was a pretty steep drop for Bitcoin's dominance, and it happened pretty quickly. Obviously, it didn't happen inside of the consolidation range. It happened after we left the consolidation range, but it still happened as a result of it. And this is where people are still willing to kind of take kind of speculative action. Now, this is really important, right? If you consolidate like this for a really long time, you guys remember how it felt when this breakout happened? It was like being trapped in a room with no air circulation for like 30 days. And then suddenly you get the nicest Swiss breeze ever. It was like that when the market kind of started to take off coming out of this horrible, horrible range. And so it's no surprise that this creates an appetite for people to start taking risk. But it doesn't last long. And, you know, that's for a lot of different reasons. I'm not going to go into that. But one of the main reasons, again, is going to be because Bitcoin's just kind of still reigning supreme in this market. And we can see that Bitcoin's dominance continues to move up, okay? If we go all the way up to the present day here, you know, we just continue to see that Bitcoin keeps making its strides up in the market. This is where we are. We're now in the present day and the bar replay is finished and Bitcoin has continued to gain dominance. Why is it happening? Why is it happening if we've already moved up? Well, it just clearly means that we haven't reached that kind of maturation phase of this bull market for Bitcoin, which is really good news because Bitcoin has now gone up from its low right here. It's now gone up by 600% or about 7 times. Okay, so it's actually, in my opinion, really, really good news that we haven't seen altcoins move up yet, because it means that we probably still have a little bit more or a lot more, I don't know, but I think more like a little bit more steam left in Bitcoin to kind of purely enjoy this rally on its own before altcoins really start taking over. And the reason this is important, I'm going to show you a lot of chart examples for this in just a minute, but you know, just to kind of preface this and kind of set your mind on what we're going to be talking about next, the real exciting profit making opportunities. And like I said, by the way, if you're interested in taking advantage of these links down below, you're going to get thousands of dollars in bonuses that you can trade these markets with. All you have to do is deposit and start trading, and each of these exchanges will give you very, very interesting fun bonuses that you can work with, that you can throw back into the market, and any profits that you generate are going to be yours to keep, even if you use the free money to make them, which is really, really cool. Again, only if you're not from a restricted region, but if you are not from a restricted region, then definitely check them out. You know, because that's really, really interesting. But the way these kind of profit opportunities will start to show up here is that, you know, you can ride the entire Bitcoin bull market, you know, from, in this case, 15K up to, let's say, 120. Let's just imagine Bitcoin's dominance tops out at 120. You can ride this thing up all the way from 15 to 120. And that means you've basically booked like, you know, a 7-8 times gain, whatever it is. And then you can rotate some of that capital into altcoins, which haven't yet taken off. And so that means, you know, if you've got $1 in, you've got $7 out. Let's use a bigger number. You got $1,000 in, you got 7K out. You can put all of that 7K or only 700 or only 300 or maybe 3,500. You know, it's you. You're going to decide. You're the only one that's in charge of your own finances. But you can put whatever you want into those next coins. Let's just say we're putting the full 7K, you know, just to make this point. the next altcoin, if Bitcoin's pulling off a 7x, you and I are not, we're not born yesterday. We understand how this works. If Bitcoin's moving up by 7x, altcoins are probably going to move up by a factor of if you pick a good one, it can move up by 10x, right? Or 20 or, something crazy. So all of a sudden, let's just take a conservative number and say you're not even lapping a Bitcoin. Let's say you just make a 5x on an altcoin. Your 7K has now turned into 35. This is the power of compounding, and this is where it gets absolutely ridiculous, ladies and gents. This is really where things just get really silly, I think. Because what we're going to see is that certain coins will move before other coins, okay? So in this case, Bitcoin moves first, and then it's usually, it might not be in this case, but it's usually Ethereum, and then it's going to be another coin. Or put differently, it's Bitcoin, and then large caps, and then mid caps, and then micro caps, and then shit coins, and meme coins, and NFTs, and scams, and, DOJ issues and whatnot. Or actually not really, because crime is legal in crypto now, right? But that's what we end up seeing. We end up seeing this very distinct shift in the market where Bitcoin has now created that environment where we are willing to speculate aggressively. And these altcoins, usually through manipulation at the beginning, pull that 2x that pulls you in and, kind of triggers your FOMO and gets you interested. You book a 5x on that next bitch, but you've only done that on a large cap, call it Ethereum, or go even a 3x, it doesn't matter. You're still going from 7 to 21, which is absolutely crazy. And then you put your money into another smaller coin because, like I said, it's cyclical. It goes in waves, right? It's going to be the bigger coins, then the slightly smaller than that, then slightly smaller than that. And it just kind of keeps going like that. And the reason that that's so powerful is if you're there to kind of see these opportunities as they form, if you're there to kind of analyze these, which is what we've been doing in this whole video. That's the reason that this video is so important. I said at the beginning of this video, if you don't like the idea of having a longer video to sit through, then get out. It's not for you, right? But if you understand, like me, that you're making important financial decisions, and these are quite important. If you're talking about kind of porting from Bitcoin into an altcoin, some people are going to be full porting or whatever the case may be, right? I am one to judge, but I won't do it too much in this video. In that case, you've got to really kind of sit and digest these ideas. I mean, if you're sitting next to me as my friend, I'm not going to do this half-assed. I'm going to go into the exact same level of detail and depth that we're going into today. And the reason for that is because I care about getting this right. I care about doing this properly. It might not mean that I make money, right? There's no guarantees in these markets, but I care about putting my best foot forward. That's really important to me. For losers, it's not important. You're not a loser. I'm not a loser. So that's not how this is going to work over here. So this is really important because we get to make a lot of money off Bitcoin, and then we get to take a little bit more risk in another coin, make a lot of money off that, and so on and so forth. Now, the reason that I think this Bitcoin dominance discussion is particularly interesting today is if we take a look at how this chart has kind of gone throughout Bitcoin's history here, but the very, very recent history, Bitcoin picked up a lot of dominance again during this move, and it continued to gain dominance after Bitcoin bottomed out, okay? This is Bitcoin's bottom right here, and if we draw where this happened on Bitcoin's dominance chart, you can see that, I mean, it's been quite an aggressive rise up for Bitcoin. For Bitcoin's dominance. From this point, we're going from about 63.25 to about 65.4, which I know it sounds like a small amount. It's only 2%, but first of all, that happened within a very short period of time, right? Only about a month. And second of all, 2% is actually a really big deal. And, it's easy to understand why it's a big deal, because on this occasion here, this was a 7% move, and I described this as life-changing money. So, of course, 2% is still going to be a big deal in these markets. But what it indicates to me is that we haven't quite reached that phase yet where people are ready to kind of leave Bitcoin behind and start buying altcoins. And I think that one of the primary kind of, factors contributing to that is just the fact that we're so fucking depressed and we're so upset and traumatized by this market. And so it's like I've been saying throughout this video, it's when that trauma leaves you, it's when that depression has been pushed to the side that we can start having these much more interesting kind of discussions about what's happening, because that's where you start being open to that kind of more greedy side of, trading altcoins, right? And doing that. It's only when we're no longer feeling that trauma. So that's when we're kind of in a broader bull market. And there's a few ways that we can kind of determine if we're entering that phase, right? I think one of the best ways that we can determine if we're entering that phase is the stock market, okay? The stock market is still, again, also reeling from, some of that Trump drama from, February and March. And also, critically, it's not quite at its all-time high yet, right? From current price at the time of making this video to the all-time high, we're looking at about a 9% move, which is still, it's not crazy, but it's still a fairly sizable move. And, I think that, just further kind of demonstrates why we're not quite there yet. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of okay, well, Trump wants to talk to China, but what if he changes his mind? And, God forbid you're one of the people that, just watch the news every day. I mean, I don't know what's going on with your mental health if that's you. I really hope that you can kind of take charge of that, or maybe you're just not impacted by it, but you probably are. In those cases, yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are still not fully there yet, but this will change if the S&P 500 can get back up to its all-time high, and more importantly, if it can pass its all-time high. And that's why I think that we don't have too long left for Bitcoin's dominance. If we just look at Bitcoin's dominance in and of itself, just kind of really zooming quite far out and understanding what this chart is showing us, I mean, we've got macro resistance here if you dare to do analysis on Bitcoin's dominance chart, because I don't think it's the most sensible thing to do. It's not really a price chart, but it still works clearly. So, I'm gonna do a bit of an, but I'm gonna keep it very, very basic. That's the most important thing. I'm gonna do a little bit of analysis, but I'm gonna keep it back. I'm not throwing a million different indicators on here. I'm not throwing fibs on this or anything. I'm just drawing a couple of boxes. And actually, obviously, as you know me very well now, that's what most of my analysis looks like anyway. But yeah, this is particularly interesting because obviously this is a macro zone of resistance for Bitcoin's dominance. And so, just from this perspective here, we don't have too much longer to go. But also, we're kind of late for altcoins to start taking over, right? I think that's one of the reasons that people are really upset with with Ethereum is, obviously Ethereum's been one of the worst performing coins as far as majors go in quite some time. And meanwhile, actually the bull market's been going on for a while now. Again, I mean, this is 800 days of trending up, which is plenty now for us to expect dominance to start kind of coming back down. And we've also moved up by 600%, right? Which is a 7x gain. So, just from all of these different perspectives here, we really are due for, doing something with altcoins, but it hasn't quite happened yet. And Bitcoin's proven that we're going to gain dominance if Bitcoin moves down, and we're going to gain dominance if Bitcoin moves up. So I think quite simply, I would probably just be expecting that to start changing above this Bitcoin all-time high. Just like I said with the S&P 500, where I expect this investor appetite to become a little bit more kind of risk-friendly, I would expect that to happen for the S&P 500 above the all-time high, exactly the same as I'd expect it to happen for Bitcoin above its all-time high. And that's why I gave you the example of $120,000, because what we saw previously, ladies and gents, is that there's no kind of turning point for Bitcoin when this dominance thing starts going crazy. On this occasion here, it happened just in the middle of the bull run. It happened kind of around here for Bitcoin, which is, a really, really interesting point in the bull market, I would say. Let's just let's go a little bit further back. We're looking at a little bit more like this. And so this is you can't really point to any significant stuff happening at this particular point in time or at this particular price level. Really, the only thing that's happening is Bitcoin's already been trending up for a while, and then some altcoins would have had to kind of gain attention for whatever reason, okay? And then they trigger the FOMO that we've been discussing at length in this video so far. So, to me, it makes total sense that can happen at 120K. I just don't really see it going on for too much longer, right? I don't really see how, Bitcoin can kind of hold on to this dominance thing going up for too much longer, given how bullish Bitcoin has already been. All it takes is one big fuck you green candle to be printed on Ethereum or Trump or Solana or Cardano or XRP or Binance or Doge or any of these other big coins that are respected in the game right now. All it takes is one of these coins to start printing one of these candles, and then everything starts kind of rushing in and enjoying that party as well. And I think that is what's particularly interesting here at this point, ladies and gents, because it tells us a lot about what we could be seeing for Bitcoin's dominance now, given that we know we're close to macro resistance, given that we know we've been trending up for a long time, given that we know that Bitcoin's been trending up for a lot of price moves as well, from 15k to 110. Given all of that, the S&P 500, I'm a big believer in this idea of it's kind of my theory of, America's, kind of 250th anniversary happens next year, independence from Britain. Donald Trump's president, he's a stock market guy, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't think that we're going to be seeing a bearish, end to 2025. And especially, I don't think that we're going to be seeing a bearish 2026. We got GTA 6 coming out next year, ladies and gents. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's just going to be a good year for a lot of us, right? So, with that in mind, I think for sure we're actually looking at a pretty dope setup here, ladies and gents, where we can quite reasonably expect. I think, at least for me, I'm not talking about we or you or whatever. This is just a me thing. I think that Bitcoin, can quite reasonably kind of start topping out as far as dominance goes, not price, but as far as dominance goes, relatively soon. And that's where we can start to get these really nice opportunities in altcoins. Now, I want to demonstrate a couple of things to you about how this has gone in Bitcoin's past. We're going to use, different phases of bull markets. Probably we'll look at this one right here because, what we've seen more recently is just weird, and didn't make a whole lot of sense. But if we go ahead and drop a vertical line back here on Bitcoin's dominance chart, and then we go ahead and bring Ethereum back into the mix here. Now, if we take a look at Ethereum at this price level right here, Ethereum is doing very, very well and kind of, just leading the market potentially. But let's actually go ahead and test that, and let's look at ETH.D. And that's going to show us Ethereum's dominance in the market, which is another very, very interesting chart, of course, because Bitcoin's going to be one of the more important ones. But after that, it's Ethereum, right? And if we take a look at what Ethereum is doing here, big spike for Ethereum following through from what happened over here. Okay, so we're seeing a big and I actually have to hide my camera now, so I'll do that. You can see that right here, Bitcoin's still in the middle of its bull market, doing very, very well. Bitcoin's dominance has topped out, and it's coming from 70% all the way down to 40% now. And Ethereum, all the while, has really started to take off at this point. So really interesting stuff that we can start to see. How does one thing affect a different market, and so on and so forth. Let's bring these charts all onto the daily time frame here, just so that we can really kind of, and I'm going to throw a fourth chart on here, so I don't know how we're going to display this here in a second. But what we've got are a couple different charts showing the total market cap of crypto. I'm going to be pulling them up in just a second here, but take a look at this. Just really, really nice 1 day time frame here. Ethereum dominance really leading the charge over here. What I'm going to do is actually I'm going to pull this up over here. We've got total right here, which is the total crypto market cap. We've got total 2, which is the market cap excluding Bitcoin. But total 3 excludes Bitcoin and Ethereum, which is really interesting because we get to see what every coin did except for Bitcoin and Ethereum. Okay, so if we go back here, this is December of 2020. December of 2020 is right here. Let me just make sure I'm getting the right price level. Put a vertical line down, and let's start to really look at what happened here, right? So this is the entire crypto market other than Ethereum and Bitcoin. And there's definitely stuff going on. There's definitely, gains in these markets, but Ethereum with its dominance really originally tops out here. Does it go higher? Yeah, it gets quite a bit higher later on, but let's just look at this for now. Ethereum's dominance kind of really rises up between these 2 points in time here, which if you're interested in dates, that's going to be the end of December 2020 to the beginning of February 2021. So only for about 2 months. But during this exact same time frame, these altcoins, they're not doing particularly well. You're really seeing all of this come together right now, ladies and gents. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and just really kind of hide this chart over to the side because I want you to just focus on these 2 charts right now with me here in this market. If you're enjoying this video so far, if you haven't done so already, do me a favor and smash those likes up. It really does help the YouTube channel as well. This is, not a kind of, deep dive that we usually do, but, this is what I actually enjoy much more than my standard videos because this is actually, this is where the most money can be made. Take a look at this. Ethereum's dominance goes up very, very well during this point of time. In terms of percent, we're going from 10% of the entire market, or actually from the low, about 10% of the entire market up to about, 17, 18% of the entire market, which is a really, really big move when you consider that this market was worth hundreds of billions, maybe even $1 trillion at this point. So, it really represents a huge, huge, huge increase in market dominance for Ethereum. And altcoins are still moving up, but by comparison, it's just not that impressive. It's up by 70%, but we're dealing with really illiquid shit coins here. We're dealing with very, very small coins on this chart. So, it's not actually, that impressive, especially compared to what happens later, because this is where Ethereum loses dominance. You're starting to see it's the exact same effect. It's the exact same effect that we've been discussing for Bitcoin. It's happening with Ethereum now. Okay, when Ethereum has had a little bit of time in the sunshine, and we're going to look at that real quick. I want to show you what I mean by sunshine here. Let's take a look at Ethereum against the dollar. And you'll start to appreciate, what was happening during this kind of price range here. Let's go ahead and move this thing. Oh, wow, we don't even have price history on this one. Let's go back onto a different chart. We'll take Coinbase. Probably the issue with my Coinbase chart is it's very messy. So we just take the crypto index chart here instead. And if we go ahead and look at where Ethereum's dominance bottomed, that's going to be about... bear with. That's going to be about over here. This is where Ethereum's dominance, really starts taking off. And this is where Ethereum's dominance, it didn't last particularly long, but this is where Ethereum's dominance starts to kind of taper off and have a pullback. It ends up going up again. It goes quite high again. Let's just mark that down as well. Just so that we don't have to come back and do that later. This is where Ethereum actually topped out. So it does continue to do well, but during this time period right here, during this time period right here, we're seeing Ethereum go up very, very well and Ethereum's dominance go up. Ethereum continues to go up from here, but first it consolidates. And this consolidation, just like Bitcoin, is what opens those floodgates for all of that speculation to come back in with these altcoins, okay? So really, really important now, because we're seeing that it doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin or Ethereum. What's actually at play here are basic market psychological dynamics at play. That's it. It's just psychological dynamics at play in these markets, just continuing to play out, continuing to kind of show us what's going on. And what's happening here with Bitcoin is that if Bitcoin rallies up and then consolidates, that creates an environment where people want to take risk. In the same vein, if Ethereum goes up and then consolidates, that creates an environment for people to start taking risk on in the altcoin market, because now Ethereum's number 2, so now you can look at number 3, 4, 5, and so on. So we're seeing that proven with numbers here as well, okay? Ethereum moves up really well against the dollar, and then it starts to consolidate, and that's exactly when this Ethereum dominance starts to take a bit of a back seat, okay? And then Ethereum gets charged up again, and it's let's actually see what happens here. This is essentially where Ethereum starts to get charged back up again and starts to go crazy. When Ethereum goes crazy, altcoins take a back seat, because why would you want to take risk in altcoins if you have Ethereum to make money from instead, right? Ethereum is a much safer, more digestible coin than Jesus coin or whatever. You know what I mean? Like or fart coin or tit coin or whatever, right? So because of that money starts flowing back into Ethereum. And of course you see, when Ethereum really starts going crazy, let's just measure this, by the way, to put this in perspective. That's a 2.5 times gain. That's where Ethereum's dominance really starts taking off as well. And it goes from a low of about 11.4 to a high of about 20.4. So again, we're seeing a whole 9 percentage point increase here for Ethereum's dominance. And is that the top? No, it gets slightly higher, but that's going to be more bear market territory. So, and we understand why that's happening. Obviously, you just don't want to hold, altcoins if we're in a bear market, right? Because you're already losing money. Why do you want to lose more money on a coin that's even smaller, even, more risky, and so on? So you're seeing all of this proven here, where, if Ethereum's doing very, very well, you're going to see that pullback. It doesn't mean the market's doing badly for dominance, if Ethereum dominance goes down. It just means that now we're starting to speculate on other coins, okay? And we can start to take a look, by the way, if you're curious. I don't know if I'll pull this up right now, because off memory it's probably not. We can do it. We can look at Solana during this time period, because I think Solana was one of the next majors that really did well. And this is the idea that I'm showing you that, but before this, it was Bitcoin, right? You could have made your money in Bitcoin. Then you could have made your money in Ethereum. And then you can make your money in the next coin. And it's, it's the same. It's exactly what I said at the beginning of the video. It's the same idea. It's the same trade idea, but you're not taking on too much additional risk because you understand that we're in a bull market, and these consolidation events when you've already moved up by quite a lot are exactly what create these opportunities to take risk in other markets. My God, we are... Oh wow, we just hit the 1 hour mark. So thank you for tuning in for this long. This is a very, very deep dive video, clearly. Let's take a look at Solana right here and really understand what this chart was showing us back then. Let's take a look at this on Binance. And if I don't really want to take those lines off. So I'm going to find the index chart, but there is no index chart, so we'll just go to Bybit instead. And if we remove all the drawings on this chart, it just does it go far enough back? Oh my God, only just, it doesn't. Yeah, so obviously because Solana was a little bit kind of new back then. Maybe KuCoin, yeah, KuCoin would have listed it. Oh man, yeah, we're just gonna have to go for Binance. I'll just delete everything on Binance. It doesn't matter. Does it even go far enough back? Yeah, it does. So here's Solana. Look at this. It's exactly what I'm saying, right? As soon as Ethereum's dominance takes out, it's already moving up, mind you. It's already moved up by a lot, by 400%, but it's nothing compared to what happens afterwards. From this point to where Ethereum's dominance tops out, Solana pulls off another 2x, and to get up to its all-time high, I mean, the rest was just history, right? I mean, it was just an absolutely, phenomenal run, for... Am I even looking at the right stuff here? I'm confusing myself right now, ladies and gents. Give me a second here. This was where Ethereum topped out with dominance, and then it topped out again over here, but it bottomed here. So yeah, this is broadly correct what I'm saying. And you could just see just how spectacularly Solana runs afterwards. So again, it's this whole idea that you have opportunities to full port from A to B to C, and then make huge gains each time where, Ethereum didn't produce, from this point, to its actual all-time high. It was, I don't know, like a 4x gain or something. Ethereum didn't produce a gain similar to Solana, right? Solana went up by 3,500% in this time. So this is where that real kind of speculation really opens up. And it just, like I said, it happens in waves. First it's 1, then it's 2, then it's 3. It's Bitcoin, then Ethereum, then Solana, then, NFTs and everything else. So, that allows us to make really, really good trades. And the reason that this is such a big deal now, and the reason that we're making this video now as opposed to, 2 weeks ago or 2 weeks from now, is because this is where those opportunities are coming back in, okay? The market is boring right now. The market is stale. The market is painful. But at the same time, Bitcoin's dominance is going up, and we've got a very, very clear market here now where, it might not happen. Obviously, there are no guarantees, but I don't think we have any, particular reason to doubt this either. I don't think that we really have any particular reason to, throw shade on what I'm saying, because it's exactly what's happened so many times already anyway. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel or say anything that's brand new, yet it paints a very, very, very fun picture of, the kind of profits that we could be standing to make in these markets with Bitcoin against the dollar on the left right here and Bitcoin's dominance on the right here. I just feel like we're looking at history rhyming once again. And if that is the case, ladies and gents, then it really means that the best opportunities to make money potentially in your whole life, but certainly in, this kind of market environment, it looks like those opportunities are yet to come. It looks like those opportunities haven't actually arrived yet. But I believe, given how high Bitcoin has gone, given how long Bitcoin's been rallying up, I believe that we're close to that, and all we need is to get above this all-time high. Because one of the other things we got to keep in mind, right, is, what happened over here? It was, this was where Bitcoin's dominance really started to take a shit again. And the reason that this happened was because we went through such a horrible price range, but we were proven correct, and the market ended up exploding higher, okay? So that really opens the floodgates for a lot of speculation, and it's because our pain gets rewarded with a breakout. Well, what do you think would happen if we beat this all-time high? You know, it's the same thing. We've gone from painful consolidation to painful consolidation to very painful consolidation to painful consolidation. And each time when we get that breakout, it's like that nice fresh breeze of fresh air hitting our face. And it's just absolutely euphoric. And that's going to lead, I believe, a lot of people to take risk on in these markets. So those were, you know, a lot of really kind of complex ideas that we've been discussing in this YouTube channel. But if you have enjoyed it, then do me a favor and smash those likes up. Obviously, check out the links in the description to you know, if you want to get into that one-to-one program. Like I said, it's very serious and it is expensive, but amazing results. Like I said, nobody's ever done badly. Everybody's paid off the fee many times over, you know, when they've taken this, you know, program, which is super cool. So if you want information on that, definitely reach out with this link in the description. If you want free money to trade these markets, then that's going to be linked in the description as well. But always check if you're from a restricted region first. If you're not from a restricted region, then you're good to go. But if you are, then I believe the only one that you can use in this description is going to be OKX, which is US compliant as well, which is really cool. But like I said, with these exchanges, when you do start trading, you're going to get some free money deposited into your account, and then you can trade with that. Any profits you make are going to be yours to keep. I don't think that applies to US users. I'm not sure. It's always a little bit weird, but definitely, you know, check it out if you are allowed to. And of course, if you found this, you know, we're over an hour in, you've been with me for a while. If you found this useful, do me a favor and smash up those likes, subscribe, tick the bell, all that good stuff. If you like these kind of deep dives, let me know. I don't know how this video is going to do, quite frankly, but, you know, obviously, if it does well, then my preference is to do, you know, larger kind of video essays like this anyway, where I can get really deep and, you know, just prove a lot of stuff with data, you know, and put that into a, you know, kind of, you know, real-time modern day context as well, which is of course very important. I had a lot of fun with this video. I hope that you enjoyed it too, and I'll see you all in the next one.